The job listing said Clearwater Basin Preserve needed a seasonal ranger for the overnight shift. It paid $22 an hour, offered housing in the station cabin, and required no prior forestry experience. Just a valid driver's license, a willingness to work alone, and the ability to follow instructions precisely. That last part was underlined. I found the listing 3 weeks after the bank gave me 90 days to settle my father's debts or lose the house. The overnight differential and free lodging meant I could save almost everything I earned. I applied that night. They called the next morning. The drive took 4 hours from the nearest actual town. The last 40 miles were unpaved, winding through Douglas firs, so dense the afternoon sun barely reached the road. My phone lost signal at mile marker 17. By mile marker 31, the road narrowed to a single lane. By mile marker 38, I saw the first of the green service markers pointing towards Station 9. The station itself sat in a clearing at the edge of a broad meadow. A modest wooden structure, maybe 800 square feet, with a sloped metal roof and a covered porch facing east. Solar panels on the roof, a generator shed behind the main building, a satellite dish bolted to a post near the tree line. 50 yards to the north, I could see the old fire tower, its wooden frame weathered gray, its observation deck dark. Hendricks was waiting on the porch when I pulled in. He was older than I expected, maybe 60, with the kind of deep tan that suggested decades of outdoor work. He didn't smile when I got out of the car. He just checked his watch. 4:17, he said. Good, we have time. He helped me unload my bags and showed me where to park, a gravel pad behind the station, out of sight from the meadow. Inside, the station was clean and functional. A main room with a desk, radio equipment, maps on the walls, a small kitchen, a bathroom with a composting toilet, a bedroom barely large enough for the cot and footlocker it contained, a basement door near the kitchen, padlocked. You'll stay upstairs, Hendricks said. Basement storage, supplies, old equipment. You won't need anything down there. He handed me a ring with 12 keys, each one labeled with a small metal tag. Station door, generator shed, maintenance shed, gate at the east boundary, equipment locker, radio cabinet. 7 others I didn't immediately recognize. Learn these, he said. You'll need to know which key opens which lock without looking, especially at night. I asked him about the shift schedule. He pulled a laminated card from the desk drawer and set it in front of me. Sunset to sunrise, he said. That's your window. During the day, you can do whatever you want. Sleep, hike the marked trails, read. After sunset, you work. The job is simple. You monitor the radio. You do perimeter checks at scheduled times. You maintain the station. You follow the rules. I waited for him to continue. He didn't. What rules? I asked. He reached into the drawer again and produced a folded sheet of paper, the creases soft from repeated handling. He unfolded it and smoothed it flat on the desk. Read this tonight, he said. Memorize it by tomorrow. I'll test you before I leave. The paper was typed, single-spaced, on Forest Service letterhead. The date at the top was from 7 years ago. The header read, Station 9, Overnight Protocol. Hendricks tapped the paper once. Every word, he said. Every number, every time, no exceptions. He left me alone to unpack. I set my bags in the bedroom, hung my jacket on the hook behind the door, and returned to the desk. The sun was already dropping behind the trees. I checked my watch. 5:43. Sunset in about 90 minutes, according to the chart tacked to the wall above the radio. I sat down and read the rules. 1. After sunset, all movement outside the station must follow marked trails only. Do not deviate for any reason, including apparent distressed wildlife or hikers in need of assistance. Report any such observations by radio and await instruction. 2. Between 9:45 p.m. and 10:15 p.m., remain inside the station with all exterior lights extinguished. Do not observe the meadow from any window during this interval. If you are on patrol when this window begins, return to the station immediately and seal the door. 3. If knocking occurs at the station door after dark, count the knocks before responding. 3 knocks may be answered. 2 knocks or 4 knocks must be ignored. Do not acknowledge them. Do not approach the door. Do not speak. 4. The radio must remain tuned to channel 4 from sunset until midnight. At midnight exactly, switch to channel 7. Do not respond to any transmission received on channel 4 after midnight, regardless of content or apparent source. 5. Maintain a minimum distance of 40 yards from the fire tower between sunset and sunrise. If lights are visible in the tower observation deck, do not investigate. Do not report the lights. Proceed with your patrol as if the tower is not present. 6. If you encounter another ranger on the night trails who is not scheduled for patrol, do not speak to them. Do not make eye contact. Return to the station by the shortest marked route. Do not run. 7. The maintenance shed must remain locked from 7 p.m. until sunrise. If you hear sounds from within the shed after 7 p.m., do not investigate. The shed key must remain in the lockbox during these hours. 8. At 11 p.m., conduct a perimeter check of the eastern boundary fence. Count the posts between markers E1 and E2. There should be 17 posts. If you count any other number, return to the station immediately and engage the door seal. Radio dispatch with the count. Await further instruction. 9. Wildlife will not cross the salt line at the station entrance. If an animal approaches the station directly after dark, it is not wildlife. Do not feed it. Do not speak to it. Do not allow it to enter. 10. Never respond to your name being called from the woods. This applies regardless of whether you recognize the voice. If the voice is familiar, consider it especially dangerous. 11. The basement storage room is accessible between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. only. The door locks automatically at 6 p.m. If you find yourself inside when it locks, remain absolutely still and silent until morning. Do not attempt to open the door from inside. 12. If the temperature inside the station drops more than 15 degrees Fahrenheit within 5 minutes, extinguish all light sources immediately. Move to the center of the main room. Do not approach windows or doors. Wait for the temperature to normalize before resuming any activity. 13. A visitor log is maintained at the station entrance. Every person who enters must sign it. Review the log once per hour. If you discover an entry you did not witness being made, do not read the name aloud. I read the list 3 times, then I folded the paper and placed it in my shirt pocket. Hendricks returned at 6:15. He quizzed me on the rules in random order. I missed the exact wording of Rule 8 on my first attempt. He made me repeat it until I could recite it without hesitation. 17 posts, I said. Between markers E1 and E2. If the count is different, return immediately, engage the seal, and radio dispatch. He nodded. The count matters, he said. The exact count. Don't estimate, don't round, count. He stayed until sunset. We walked the perimeter together in daylight, and he showed me the boundary markers, the salt lines, The emergency trail markers with their red reflectors. He pointed out the safe cabin at elevation marker 1847, though he said I'd likely never need it. If you do, he added, you'll know. At 7:22 p.m., the last edge of the sun dropped below the ridgeline. Hendricks checked his watch, checked the horizon, and picked up his bag. I'll be back in 6 days to check on you, he said. Radio check every night at midnight, Channel 7. Dispatch will confirm. If you miss a check, they send someone. He paused at the door. Follow the rules, he said. All of them, every time. Don't improvise. Don't rationalize. Don't try to understand. Just comply. I locked the door behind him. The first night was quiet. I kept the exterior lights on until 9:43, then killed them and sat in the dark center of the main room, listening. Through the windows, I could see the meadow, silver under a 3/4 moon. At 9:45 exactly, I pulled the curtains and looked away. I heard nothing, saw nothing. At 10:15, I opened the curtains again. The meadow was empty. At 11 p.m., I took my flashlight and walked the eastern fence. I counted the posts 3 times to be certain. 17. I returned to the station and marked the count in my log. At midnight, I switched the radio to Channel 7. Dispatch confirmed my check-in. A woman's voice, flat and professional. She read back my badge number and asked if I had any observations to report. Negative, I said. All clear. Understood, Station 9. Maintain protocol. Check-in at 0600. The line went silent. I sat in the main room with the lamp on low and listened to the forest settle into its nighttime rhythms. Wind in the trees. An owl somewhere to the south. The creak of the station's wooden frame expanding and contracting with the temperature. At 2:14 a.m., I heard footsteps on the porch. I froze. The steps were deliberate, evenly spaced, circling from the front door toward the east side of the building. I could hear them clearly through the walls, boot heels on wood. 1 step per second. They reached the east corner, continued along the side, turned at the back corner, continued along the rear wall. I stayed in my chair. I didn't move. The footsteps completed their circuit and stopped at the front door. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. 20. No knock came. The footsteps resumed, circling again in the same pattern, same pace, same rhythm. Front, east, back, west, front. They circled 4 times before stopping. I didn't sleep. At 5:58 a.m., the first gray light touched the meadow. At 6 a.m., I unlocked the basement door. It hadn't been locked from my side, I realized, just from the mechanism Hendricks mentioned, and checked the supply inventory. Salt, batteries, kerosene, canned food, water in sealed jugs. Everything matched the manifest. I slept until noon, ate a cold lunch, and read until the sun began its descent. At 7:19 p.m., sunset, I was ready. The second night, the footsteps returned at 2:11 a.m. Same circuit, same pace, same stop at the front door. 4 circuits, no knock. I made notes in my log. Precise times, duration, direction of travel. The third night, I heard something else. It was 10 minutes after the 9:45 blackout window had closed. I was opening the curtains when I saw the figure at the tree line. It stood maybe 60 yards out, just inside the first row of trees. Human-shaped, roughly human-sized, standing perfectly still. I couldn't make out features in the darkness, but I could see the silhouette clearly against the lighter shadow of the forest floor. I pulled the curtains closed again. I turned off the lamp and sat in the dark. Rule 2 said not to observe the meadow during the blackout window. The window had closed, but nothing in the rules said what to do if something observed back. I sat until 11 p.m., then did my perimeter check. 17 posts. The figure was gone when I looked toward the tree line. I completed my circuit and returned to the station. At midnight, dispatch confirmed my check-in. I reported nothing about the figure. The rules didn't require it. The rules about the tower specifically said not to report. I assumed the same principle applied. On the fourth night, someone knocked on the door. I was at the desk filling out the daily activity log when I heard it. 3 sharp raps on the wooden frame. 3 knocks may be answered. I stood up. I walked to the door. I put my hand on the knob. "Hello?" I called. No response. I waited. The rules said 3 knocks could be answered, but they didn't say I had to answer. They just said I could. I checked my watch. 11:42 p.m. "Station 9, I called through the door. "Identify yourself." Silence. I let go of the knob and stepped back. I returned to the desk and waited. No further knocks came. The footsteps didn't circle that night. In the morning, I checked the porch for tracks. The wood was dry and showed no marks. I checked the soft earth at the base of the stairs. Nothing. No boot prints. No impressions of any kind. I added it to my log. Hendricks returned on the 6th day, as promised. He arrived at 2 p.m. and spent 3 hours reviewing my logs, checking my supply counts, inspecting the salt lines. He found one gap in the eastern line where rain had washed the salt thin. He made me reseal it immediately. "This is good work," he said when he finished. "Clean, methodical. Most people don't last this long." I asked him what he meant by that. "Previous rangers," he said. "Some quit after the first week. Some had to be removed. Some—" He stopped. "Some what?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. "Some stopped following the rules," he said. It didn't matter why. What mattered was that they stopped. I waited for him to continue. He didn't. "The rules work," he said finally. "That's all you need to know. They've been refined over decades. Every line exists for a reason. Every number was chosen deliberately. Don't question them. Don't modify them. Don't test them. Just follow them." He left before sunset. I watched his truck disappear down the service road, and then I was alone again. The 7th night, I heard my father's voice. I was on the porch, completing my 10 p.m. equipment check. Flashlight batteries at 70%, radio at full charge, salt reserves adequate, when I heard it coming from the meadow. Marin. My name, my father's voice. The exact cadence he used when he was disappointed. That flat, low tone that meant I'd failed some expectation I hadn't known existed. "Marin, come here." I stood completely still. The voice was coming from roughly the center of the meadow, maybe 100 yards out. I couldn't see anyone in the darkness. "I need your help." Rule 10. Never respond to your name being called from the woods. If the voice is familiar, consider it especially dangerous. The meadow wasn't technically the woods, but I understood the principle. I went back inside. I locked the door. I sat in the center of the room and did not move until the sun came up. In the morning, I walked out to the meadow with the daylight bright around me. The grass was undisturbed, no tracks, no marks, no indication that anyone had stood there in the night. I returned to the station and sat at the desk for a long time. My father had been dead for 6 weeks. Pancreatic cancer, fast and cruel. I'd driven down for the funeral, sat through the service, watched them lower the casket into the ground. I knew his voice. I knew the way he said my name, and I knew with absolute certainty that what I'd heard in the meadow was exactly right. Too exactly right. I understood then what the rules were protecting against. Not confusion, not fear. Accuracy. The things in the forest didn't make mistakes. They didn't approximate. They replicated. And the only defense was to never engage, to treat the accuracy itself as the warning sign. I added a note to my log. Personal lure, 10:18 p.m., responded to by no response. No deviation from protocol. 3 more weeks passed. I developed routines within the routines. Morning inventory at 6:15. Afternoon rest from noon to 4. Pre-sunset checks starting at 6. Blackout window at 9:45 exactly. I learned to trust my watch absolutely, to treat its readings as more real than my own perceptions. Post-blackout curtain check at 10:15. Eastern fence count at 11. Radio check at midnight. Rest in the center of the room. Lamp on low until dawn. The footsteps circled most nights, though not all. Sometimes 2 circuits, sometimes 6. I stopped counting after the first week. What mattered was that they never knocked, never entered, never deviated from their path. The figure at the tree line appeared 3 more times during my 4th week. Each time, it stood closer than before. 60 yards, then 45, then 30. It was still outside the salt line. That seemed to matter. Dispatch added a new instruction to my midnight check-in on day 23. Station 9, be advised, amendments to overnight protocol have been issued. Hard copy arriving via supply drop tomorrow. Implement immediately upon receipt. I acknowledged the transmission and waited. The supply drop came at 12:45 p.m. A service truck I didn't recognize, driven by a ranger I'd never met. She left 3 boxes at the trailhead marker and drove away without speaking to me. I retrieved the boxes by 12:52, well within the safe window, and carried them to the station. Inside the second box, beneath the salt refills and battery packs, I found an envelope marked Urgent, Station 9 Protocol Amendment. I opened it at the desk. The cover letter was brief. The following amendments take effect immediately and supersede any conflicting instructions in the original protocol. Memorize before sunset. Confirm receipt via midnight radio check. The amendments were numbered 14 through 22. I read them slowly, making sure I understood each one. 14. Amendment to rule. 3. If a 5th knock occurs within 30 seconds of the 4th, exit the station immediately via the rear door. Proceed to the safe cabin at elevation marker 1847. Do not return to the station before sunrise. Do not look behind you during transit. 15. Supply drops at the trailhead marker must be retrieved before 1:15 p.m. After 1:15 p.m., consider all drop supplies compromised. Do not retrieve them. Do not approach the trailhead after 1:15 p.m. until the following dawn. 16. If radio contact with dispatch cannot be established for more than 45 consecutive minutes between midnight and 4 a.m., initiate blackout protocol regardless of other conditions. Remain in blackout until contact is restored or until dawn. 17. The figure observed at the tree line during or after the 9:45 window should be ignored, even if it approaches beyond its previous distance. It has learned to stand closer. This does not represent increased danger if all other protocols are maintained. Maintain composure. Do not engage. 18. Water from the station well is not to be consumed between 2 a.m. and 3:30 a.m. Use only sealed bottled reserves during this period. This restriction applies even if bottled reserves are low. 19. If you hear Ranger Morrison's voice on any radio channel, do not respond. Ranger Morrison is no longer employed by the Forest Service. Treat any transmission attributed to Morrison as hostile communication. 20. The eastern boundary fence post count has been updated. The correct count between markers E1 and E2 is now 19 posts. Count 19. Previous counts of 17 are no longer valid. 21. The maintenance shed may produce sounds consistent with human speech after 7 p.m. This is expected. Do not investigate. Do not attempt to identify the speaker. The shed door remains locked. 22. If a fellow ranger arrives at the station after dark and requests entry, verify their badge number against the current duty roster before admitting them. The current roster is updated weekly via supply drop. If their badge number does not appear on the roster, do not open the door regardless of their appearance or stated purpose. I read the amendments 3 times, then folded the paper and placed it with the original rules in my shirt pocket. I confirmed receipt at midnight. Dispatch acknowledged. Station 9, be advised. Morrison situation is ongoing. Additional protocols may follow. Maintain vigilance. I asked what the Morrison situation was. The dispatcher paused for several seconds before responding. Morrison was assigned to Station 12, she said. Station 12 is no longer operational. She didn't elaborate. I didn't ask. The next 3 weeks tested every rule I'd memorized. The figure at the tree line moved closer. I saw it at 25 yards one night, standing just outside the salt perimeter, its silhouette clearer now in the moonlight. It was human-shaped, but wrong in proportions. Arms slightly too long, shoulders too narrow, head tilted at an angle that suggested its neck didn't work the way a neck should. I followed Amendment 17. I ignored it. I maintained composure. The footsteps changed their pattern. Instead of circling at 2 a.m., they began at 1:47. They circled 7 times instead of 4. On the 3rd night of the new pattern, they stopped at the front door, and I heard breathing. Deep, slow breathing, like someone catching their wind after a long run. It lasted for 4 minutes and 20 seconds. I timed it. Then the footsteps resumed their circuit and eventually faded. I heard Morrison's voice on Channel 4 at 12:38 a.m., 16 days after receiving the amendments. Station 9, this is Morrison. Station 12, reporting. Do you copy? The voice was male, middle-aged, with a slight accent I couldn't place. It sounded tired, human, real. I switched off the radio. I waited until 12:45, then switched it back on and retuned to Channel 7. Dispatch, this is Station 9. Please confirm frequency. Channel 7 confirmed. Station 9. Midnight check-in logged. Any observations? I hesitated. Station 9. Negative, I said. No observations. I didn't report the Morrison transmission. The rules didn't require it. The rules said not to respond, and I hadn't. That was enough. 2 nights later, I heard Morrison again, this time on Channel 7. Marin, this is Morrison. I know you're listening. I looked at the radio. The frequency indicator showed 7.60, exactly where it should be. The voice was coming through the correct channel. I need help. They won't let me leave Station 12. Something happened here. Something wrong. You have to come. I reached for the dial. My hand stopped an inch away. Please, the voice said. I have a family. I have a daughter. She's only 7. Please. I turned off the radio. In the morning, I checked the duty roster from the last supply drop. Morrison, Edward J., was listed under inactive, terminated. The date of termination was 7 months ago. I didn't turn on the radio again until the next midnight check-in. Dispatch confirmed contact without incident. I didn't mention Morrison's voice. The next trial came 6 days later. I was doing my 11 p.m. fence check, counting the posts as I always did, 19 as Amendment 20 specified, when I heard a child crying in the woods beyond the eastern boundary. It was faint at first, barely audible above the wind in the trees. A small voice, hitching with sobs, calling for help. It sounded like a girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old. "Hello," the voice called. "Is someone there? Please, I'm lost." I stopped walking. The voice was coming from roughly 50 yards beyond the fence line, deep in the trees where my flashlight couldn't reach. "Please," the voice sobbed. "I want my mom. I want to go home." I stood at the fence. Rule 1 said not to deviate from marked trails for hikers in need. The fence was the boundary. Beyond the fence was not my territory. "I can hear you," the voice said. "Please, I'm so cold. Please help me." I counted the remaining posts. 17, 18, 19. The count was correct. I turned back toward the station and walked without running. Behind me, the crying stopped. The silence was worse. At month 2, they sent me a trainee. His name was Warren, 23 years old, fresh out of the Forest Service training program, assigned to Station 9 for his overnight certification. Dispatch notified me at noon. He arrived at 4:15 p.m., driving a service vehicle identical to Hendrick's truck. He was eager, friendly, exactly the kind of person who asked questions instead of following instructions. I handed him the rules at 4:30. He read them once, quickly, then looked up at me with an expression I'd seen before. The look of someone who thought the rules were a joke or a test, or an outdated formality that modern rangers didn't really follow. "Is this serious?" he asked. "Every word," I said. "Some of this seems..." "Don't." He stopped. "I've been here 2 months," I said. "Hendricks has been running this station for 18 years. The person before him did it for 12. The rules work. That's all that matters." He folded the paper and put it in his pocket. I made him recite them back to me before sunset. He missed the exact wording of Rule 8, the post count, and I made him repeat it until he could say it without hesitation. 19 posts, he said. "Wait, the paper says 17. Check the amendments." He checked. He looked confused. The count changed? The count was updated. But how can the count? It doesn't matter how. What matters is that you count 19. And if you count any other number, you return immediately, seal the door, and radio dispatch. Do you understand? He said he understood. I didn't believe him. The first night with Warren went smoothly. He followed the rules during the blackout window. He did the fence count correctly, 19, which he verified 3 times at my instruction. He didn't engage when the footsteps circled at 2:23 a.m. The second night, the voice came. We were in the main room at 11:45, preparing for the midnight check-in, when I heard it from the meadow. "Warren," he stood up immediately. "What was that?" "Sit down. Someone's out there." Someone called my name. "Warren," the voice called again. It was female this time, young, familiar apparently, because Warren's face went pale. That's my sister. That's Emily." "It's not. She's supposed to be at college. How would she..." He moved toward the door. I stepped in front of him. "Rule 10, I said. "Recite it." "But that's my..." "Recite it." He stopped. His breathing was fast. His hands were shaking. "Never respond to your name being called from the woods," he said slowly. "Regardless of whether you recognize the voice, if the voice is familiar, consider it especially dangerous. Good, now sit down. He sat. Outside, the voice called twice more, then fell silent. Warren didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. In the morning, he asked me how I knew it wasn't really his sister. Because nothing real calls you from the woods at night, I said. Nothing real stands at the tree line waiting to be noticed. Nothing real knocks twice or 4 times and expects an answer. But how does it know her voice? How does it know my name? I don't know. You don't know. I don't need to know. I need to follow the rules. You need to follow the rules. The rules work. That's enough. He looked at me like I'd failed some test he'd expected me to pass. Like I should have answers beyond compliance. What if the rules are wrong? He asked. They're not. But what if they've been refined over decades? Every line exists for a reason. Every number was chosen deliberately. Hendricks told me that. The person before him probably told him the same thing. The rules work because they've been tested, not in a lab, in this station, by people who survived by following them and people who didn't survive by ignoring them. Warren didn't respond. He went to the bedroom and closed the door. I heard him crying through the wall. On his 3rd night, he broke Rule 6. I was doing the 11 p.m. fence check alone. Warren had asked to stay at the station, and I'd agreed, thinking he needed rest, when I heard voices near the southern trail marker. 2 voices. One was Warren's. The other I didn't recognize. I moved toward the sound, staying on the marked path, flashlight low. Through the trees, I could see flashlight beams, maybe 80 yards ahead. Warren was standing at the edge of the trail, talking to someone in a ranger uniform. The other ranger was standing off the marked path, just by a few feet, but off it. I was too far away to hear their conversation, but I could see Warren's body language. Relaxed. Open. He gestured toward the station. The other ranger nodded and began walking toward him. "Warren," I shouted. "Do not engage. Return to station immediately." He turned toward me. The other ranger turned too. In the moonlight, I could see its face clearly for the first time. The proportions were wrong. Eyes too far apart. Mouth too wide. Smile too fixed. It looked like someone had described a human face in words, and this was the result of following those words precisely without understanding what they meant. "Station 9, I shouted again. "By shortest marked route, now." Warren ran. I ran too, cutting back toward the station along the eastern trail. I reached the door first and held it open. Warren came up the steps 30 seconds later, breathing hard, pale with fear. What was inside? I sealed the door. I checked every window. I verified the salt line at the threshold. "What was that?" Warren asked again. "I don't know." "But you saw its face." "I saw its face. It was wrong. It was wrong." We sat in the center of the room until dawn. Neither of us spoke. At 5:45 a.m., I checked the perimeter. The trails were empty. No tracks, no marks, no indication that anyone other than Warren and I had been in the forest that night. I found Warren's written report on the desk when I woke that afternoon. He'd left at 11 a.m. while I was sleeping. The report described the encounter at the southern trail marker, his failure to follow Rule 6, and his decision to request immediate transfer from Station 9. He'd signed it at the bottom. The handwriting was shaky. In the margin, he'd written, "I'm sorry. I wasn't ready. The rules aren't enough for me. I need to understand." I never saw him again. Dispatch confirmed his transfer 3 days later. They assigned no replacement. Month 3 began with a storm. The weather came in from the northwest on a Thursday afternoon. the sky darkening by 2 p.m., until it looked more like dusk than midday. By 4, the first rain was falling, and by sunset, the wind was gusting hard enough to shake the station walls. I'd checked my supplies that morning. 15 salt refills, 8 battery packs, 4 kerosene jugs, 62 sealed water bottles. Enough for 3 weeks if I rationed carefully. The power went out at 8:47 p.m. I'd been preparing for the blackout window when the lights flickered twice and died. The radio squawked once and fell silent. The hum of the small refrigerator in the kitchen stopped. In the sudden quiet, all I could hear was the wind and the rain hammering the roof. Emergency Protocol 1. During power failure, light the kerosene lamp at station center only. Do not use flashlights. Do not investigate the generator. I found the lamp in the kitchen cabinet, matches in the drawer beside the sink. I lit the wick with steady hands and placed the lamp on the floor in the center of the main room. The glow reached maybe 10 feet in every direction. Beyond that, darkness. I sat beside the lamp and waited. The footsteps came at 9:31 p.m., earlier than usual, faster than usual. They circled the station once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5. On the 6th circuit, they stopped at the front door. 3 knocks. I stood up slowly. 3 knocks may be answered. But the power was out. The radio was dead. I had no way to verify who might be outside, and the duty roster was in the filing cabinet across the room, too far from the lamp's light. I stayed where I was. 3 more knocks. Station 9, a voice through the door, male, calm. Open up, emergency check from dispatch. I didn't respond. Marin, it's Hendricks. Open the door. Hendricks' voice, Hendricks' cadence, the right name, the right authority. But Hendricks wasn't scheduled for another 12 days. And nothing in my protocols mentioned emergency checks during power outages. Station 9, the voice said again. Protocol 16 requires door verification. Open up. There was no Protocol 16. The protocols ended at 22. I sat back down beside the lamp. I didn't speak. I didn't move. The knocking continued for another 12 minutes. Then it stopped. The footsteps resumed their circuit, faster now, completing 8 more rotations before fading into the rain. At midnight, the power returned. The lights came on all at once, harsh after hours in lamplight. The radio crackled back to life, already tuned to Channel 7. I picked up the handset. Dispatch, this is Station 9. Please confirm contact. Static for several seconds. Then, Station 9, contact confirmed. We lost you at 2057. Current time, 0003. Acknowledge. Acknowledged. Power failure during storm. Lamp protocol observed. No deviation. Understood. Any additional observations? I paused. Knock sequence at 21:31. 3 knocks, followed by voice claiming dispatch emergency check. Voice claimed to be Hendricks. No verification possible. Entry denied. Silence on the line. Station 9, be advised. Hendricks is currently at Regional. He has not left Regional in 72 hours. Acknowledge. Acknowledged. Entry denial was correct response. Additional protocols may follow. Maintain standard procedure. Dispatch out. I sat at the desk for a long time after the transmission ended. The voice had been perfect. Hendricks' voice exactly. The accent, the rhythm, the specific way he pronounced my name. There was no detail wrong, no approximation, no uncanny edge. Just the context, the impossible context. That was the tell. Not what was said, but when. Not how the voice sounded, but what it asked for. The rules didn't work because they identified what was wrong. They worked because they defined what was right, and anything else, no matter how convincing, was automatically wrong by exclusion. I understood the rules differently after that night. New amendments arrived with the next supply drop. The envelope was marked Emergency Addendum, Storm Season Protocols. Inside were 3 additional rules, numbered 1 through 3 in a separate sequence. Storm Protocol 1. During extended power failure exceeding 40 minutes, remain within 10 feet of the primary light source. Do not investigate the generator shed. The generator will restore itself, or it will not. Your presence at the shed will not affect this outcome. Storm Protocol 2. If the station door receives knocks during a power failure, do not respond regardless of the count. Standard knock protocols are suspended until power is restored and radio contact with dispatch is confirmed. All visitors during power failure should be considered hostile regardless of identification. Storm Protocol 3. If radio contact cannot be established for more than 90 consecutive minutes during a storm, prepare for extended shelter in place. Seal all entry points with salt and electrical tape. The door may not be opened for any voice, including confirmed dispatch voices, until visual confirmation of daylight through the eastern window. I memorized them immediately. I tested myself 3 times before sunset. The storm continued for 6 days. On the 2nd day, the power failed again at 3:17 a.m. I lit the lamp and sat in the center of the room. The knocking came at 4:22. 2 knocks this time, then a pause, then 4 more. I didn't respond. The voice that followed was a woman's voice, my mother's voice. "Marin, please, I'm outside. I came to visit you. Let me in." My mother lived 1,100 miles away in Pennsylvania. She hadn't traveled in 6 years because of her arthritis. She didn't know where I worked. I sat in the lamplight and waited. "Marin, I'm cold. Why won't you open the door? It's your mother." I counted my breaths. In for 4 seconds. Hold for 4. Out for 4. The meditation technique I'd learned in college, back when stress meant exam deadlines instead of whatever circled a station in the dark. Marin, in for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. The voice changed. It was still my mother's voice, still her cadence and pitch, but something shifted in the tone, something frustrated, something that sounded like a mask slipping. "Open the door, Marin." Not a request this time, a command. The kind of command that expected obedience. "Open the door." I didn't move. The next sound wasn't a voice. It was something scraping against the wood. Slow, deliberate, moving from the door toward the nearest window. I heard it trace along the wall, circling the station the way the footsteps did, but lower, closer to the ground, like something dragging itself. At 5:58, the scraping stopped. At 6:01, the first gray light touched the eastern window. At 6:15, the power returned. I didn't sleep that day. On the 4th day of the storm, the radio picked up a broadcast I'd never heard before. It came through on Channel 4 at 2:47 a.m. After midnight, when Channel 4 should have been silent except for hostile transmissions. The voice was male, calm, speaking in a slow, measured rhythm. "All stations, this is regional. Code 7 activation. Repeat, Code 7 activation. All personnel return to nearest shelter point. Do not remain in field. Do not attempt contact with other stations. Shelter in place until Code 7 is lifted. Acknowledge." I did not acknowledge. The rules said not to respond to Channel 4 after midnight. The broadcast repeated 3 times at 5-minute intervals. Each time, the voice was identical. Same words, same pacing, same flat tone. At 3:07, the broadcast changed. "Station 9, the voice said. "We know you're listening. Acknowledge." I turned off the radio. I didn't turn it back on until midnight the following night, when I switched directly to Channel 7 and established contact with dispatch. They confirmed that no Code 7 had been issued. They confirmed that no regional broadcast had been authorized. They confirmed that I had followed protocol correctly by not responding. "Station 9, dispatch said. Be advised, the storm will break within 24 hours. Additional personnel are en route. Maintain shelter protocol until visual contact with relief team." Understood. Dispatch out. The relief team arrived on day 7, 3 hours after the storm ended. 2 rangers I'd never met, driving a truck with a trailer attached. They didn't enter the station. They unloaded supplies at the trailhead and left a sealed envelope under a rock at marker E1. Inside the envelope was a message from Hendricks. "Marin, you did well. Storm season is difficult, even for experienced rangers. I've reviewed your logs via dispatch upload. Your compliance record is perfect. I'll visit personally within the week to discuss your continuation. In the meantime, new protocols are enclosed for the transitional period. Memorize before sunset today." The new protocols were extensive. 23. During the 3 nights following a major storm, the 9:45 blackout window extends to 10:45. The figure at the tree line will be active for longer during this period. 24. Post-storm perimeter checks require 2 circuits instead of 1. Count the eastern fence posts on both circuits. If the count differs between circuits, return to station and report immediately. 25. After a storm, the salt lines must be reinforced daily until dry conditions have persisted for 72 consecutive hours. Moisture weakens the barrier. 26. Any supplies left at the trailhead for more than 6 hours after a storm must be considered compromised regardless of the time of day. 27. If strange lights are visible above the tree line during the 3 nights post-storm, document their position, but do not observe them for more than 30 consecutive seconds. I followed each new protocol without deviation. On the 2nd post-storm night, I saw the lights. They floated above the tree line to the north, pale blue-green and perfectly spherical, moving in slow arcs that didn't match any aircraft pattern I'd ever seen. I watched them for 28 seconds, noted their position in my log, and looked away. On the 3rd post-storm night, the eastern fence post count was different. I did my first circuit at 11 p.m. as required. I counted carefully, touching each post as I passed it. 19 posts, correct. I began my 2nd circuit at 11:23. I counted again, 20 posts. I stopped at the end of the line. I recounted in my head. I was sure I hadn't miscounted. I touched each post. I'd felt the rough wood under my fingers. 19 on the first pass, 20 on the second. I returned to the station immediately. I sealed the door. I radioed dispatch. Station 9 reporting. Fence post count discrepancy. First circuit, 19. Second circuit, 20. Requesting instruction. The response took longer than usual. Station 9 acknowledged. Remain in shelter. Do not exit for any reason until dawn. Mark this log entry with code FPC-20. Regional will review. Understood. Station 9 sheltering in place. I sat in the center of the room until sunrise. Nothing knocked, nothing circled. The silence was worse than the sounds. In the morning, I did a third count. 21 posts. I didn't go back to the fence until Hendricks arrived. He came 3 days later on a Tuesday afternoon. He looked older than I remembered, more tired, with deeper lines around his eyes. He didn't comment on my appearance, but I knew I looked worse. I'd lost weight. I wasn't sleeping more than 3 hours at a stretch. My hands shook when I reached for things. "Show me the fence," he said. We walked together in daylight. He counted while I watched. 22, he said. It was 17 when I started. Then the amendment changed it to 19. I know. It's been different every day since the storm. It won't stop changing. He stood at the fence line for a long time, looking into the trees. This happens sometimes, he said finally. After big storms, after long storms, the boundary shifts, the count changes. We adjust. Adjust how? New protocol. You stop counting the posts. You count the distance instead. He pulled a measuring tape from his pocket. He walked the fence line from marker E1 to E2, unreeling the tape as he went. 412 feet, he said. That's your new standard. Not the post count. The distance. The distance doesn't change. The posts change, but the distance doesn't. The posts were never what mattered. They were just how we used to measure. The boundary is the boundary. It doesn't move. How we perceive it moves, so we adjust our perception. I didn't understand. I didn't need to. I memorized the new number, 412 feet. I verified it that night with my own tape. I verified it every night after. The count kept changing. I stopped looking at the posts. Summer turned to fall. The nights grew longer, which meant more hours of protocol, more chances for things to go wrong. The figure at the tree line stopped appearing at 30 yards. It started appearing at 20, then 15, then 10. It never crossed the salt line. It never spoke. It just stood there, night after night, watching the station with whatever it used for eyes. I stopped looking at it directly. I kept it in my peripheral vision during my perimeter checks, just enough to know where it was, never enough to see details. Dispatch sent word in October that another trainee would be arriving. Someone had to replace Warren. Someone always had to replace the ones who left. Her name was Chen. She arrived on a Friday afternoon, efficient and professional, with a clipboard and a detailed set of questions about the station's maintenance history. She'd done overnight rotations at 3 other stations before this one. She thought she knew what to expect. I handed her the rules, all of them. The original 13, the amendments, the storm protocols, the post-storm protocols, the new measurement rule for the fence. She read them carefully, twice, making notes in the margin. Some of these contradict each other, she said. The amendments supersede the originals. But Amendment 20 says 19 posts, and your note says to measure distance instead. The measurement rule supersedes Amendment 20. Where's that documented? It's documented in my log. Hendricks authorized it verbally. If you want formal paperwork, you'll need to request it from regional. She looked at me for a long moment. I couldn't read her expression. How long have you been here? She asked. 5 months. Most people don't last 5 months. I know. What's different about you? I thought about it. I stopped trying to understand, I said. I just do what the rules say. When the rules change, I do what the new rules say. When something doesn't make sense, I accept that it doesn't make sense, and I follow the procedure anyway. Understanding isn't the job. Compliance is the job. Survival is the job. Everything else is noise. She nodded slowly. That's what Hendricks told me too, she said. I wasn't sure if he was serious. He's serious. I'm serious. The rules are serious. Everything you hear at night is serious. Everything you see at the tree line is serious. The only thing that isn't serious is your desire to understand it, because that desire will get you killed. She didn't argue. She memorized the rules. She asked clarifying questions about procedures, but not about purposes. She did her first fence measurement at 11 p.m. without complaint. 412 feet. Correct. I started to think she might last. On her third night, the thing in the maintenance shed spoke. We were in the main room at 8:45, preparing for the blackout window, when we both heard it. A voice from behind the station. From inside the locked shed. Hello. Chen froze. Is someone in there? No. But I heard, no one is in there. Amendment 21. The shed produces sounds consistent with human speech. This is expected. It sounded like a person. It sounded like a voice. That's different. Hello, the voice called again. Can anyone hear me? I'm locked in, please. Chen moved toward the back door. I put my hand on her arm. What are you doing? Someone might be. No one is in the shed. The shed has been locked since 7 p.m. I verified the lock myself. No one was inside when I locked it. No one is inside now. Then what's making that sound? I don't know. That's not the relevant question. The relevant question is, what does the protocol say? She closed her eyes. I watched her recite it silently, lips moving. Do not investigate. Do not attempt to identify the speaker. Good. But what if someone's really... Chen, what does the protocol say? She opened her eyes. Do not investigate. Then we don't investigate. We sat in the main room with the lights off during the blackout window. The voice called from the shed 6 more times. Each time it was different. A woman's voice, a child's voice, a voice speaking a language I didn't recognize. Each time, we ignored it. At 10:15, the voice stopped. In the morning, I showed Chen how to check the shed in daylight. We opened it together and inspected every corner. Empty. No one inside. No sign that anyone had ever been inside. What makes the voice? She asked. I don't know. Doesn't that bother you? It did. It doesn't anymore. She looked at me the way Warren had looked at me, back at the beginning, like she was waiting for an answer I couldn't give. The rules work, I said. That's all I know. That's all I need to know. If you need more than that, this job will break you. If you can accept not knowing, you might survive. She didn't respond, but she didn't leave either. Week 2 with Chen brought the worst night I'd experienced at Station 9. It started with the radio. We were doing our midnight check-in, both of us at the desk, when dispatch's voice cut out mid-sentence. Station 9, confirmation received. Current status is static, then silence. I waited 10 seconds, 20, 30. Dispatch, please repeat. Transmission interrupted. No response. Dispatch, this is Station 9. Please confirm contact. Nothing. I checked the radio. Power was good. Frequency was correct. Equipment was functioning. Amendment 16, Chen said. Radio silence exceeding 45 minutes initiates blackout protocol. We're not at 45 minutes yet. I know. I know. We sat in silence, watching the clock. At 12:32, I tried again. No response. At 12:44, still nothing. At 12:46, the 45-minute threshold passed. Blackout protocol, I said. All lights off. All external sounds ignored. We wait. We killed the lights. I lit the kerosene lamp and placed it at the center of the room. We sat on either side of it, watching the flame. At 12:58, the footsteps started. Not the usual circuit, not the slow, deliberate pace I'd become accustomed to. These were fast, almost running. They circled the station twice in maybe 90 seconds, then stopped at the front door. 2 knocks. Pause. 2 more knocks. Pause. 2 more. That's not 3, Chen whispered. No. And it's not 4. No. 2 knocks. Pause. 2 knocks. Pause. 2 knocks. The rhythm was wrong. It wasn't the pattern the rules described. It was something new, something testing the boundaries. What do we do? Chen asked. Nothing. The storm protocol says all visitors during power failure are hostile. We have no radio contact. We treat it the same. But the power isn't... 2 knocks. Pause. 2 knocks. Harder now. Impatient. We don't respond. We don't move. We wait. The knocking stopped. Then the voice started. Marin, Chen, I know you're in there. Hendrik's voice. Perfect Hendrik's voice. This is a scheduled check. Open the door. We didn't move. Regional sent me. Your radio's been down for an hour. They're worried about you. Open up. I checked my watch. 12:59. The radio had been down for 59 minutes. Not an hour. Close, but not exact. Chen, the voice said. I came to see how your orientation is going. Open the door. Let me in. Chen's hand twitched toward the door. I grabbed her wrist. It knows your name, she whispered. It knows a lot of things. It doesn't matter what it knows. It matters what the rules say. But what if it's not? How do you know? Because Hendricks would never ask us to violate protocol. Never. He'd wait outside until dawn if he had to. He'd understand. This thing doesn't understand. It's pressing. It's demanding. That's how I know. The voice changed. Open the door. Not Hendricks anymore. Something else. Something older, deeper, with too many harmonics. Like 3 voices speaking in unison, but slightly out of sync. Open the door, Marin. Open the door, Chen. We're waiting. We've been waiting so long. The lamp flame flickered. The temperature dropped. I could see my breath in the air. Center of the room, I said. Don't move. Don't speak. We huddled close to the lamp. The cold spread from the walls inward, frost forming on the windows. The wood of the floor creaking as it contracted. The voice spoke again. This time from inside the station. You can't hide forever. It wasn't coming from the door. It was coming from everywhere, from the walls themselves. The rules won't save you. The rules are just delay. Eventually you'll slip. Eventually you'll make a mistake, and we'll be there. The lamp flickered again. The wick guttered, nearly went out. I pulled the spare matches from my pocket. I struck one and held it to the wick. The flame steadied. The cold receded. The voice fell silent. At 1:27 a.m., the radio crackled to life. Station 9, this is dispatch. Do you copy? I dove for the handset. Dispatch, Station 9. We copy. Please confirm identity. Station 9, identity confirmed. Today's code is Redwood. Repeat, Redwood. Acknowledge. I checked my code sheet. Redwood was correct. Acknowledged. Station 9 standing down for blackout protocol. Understood. Status report? I looked at Chen. She was shaking. Multiple anomalies during radio silence, I said. Knock patterns outside standard parameters. Voice lure. Apparent thermal event. No protocol breaches. No casualties. Understood. Log all events. Regional will review. Maintain standard overnight protocol. Dispatch out. The line went quiet. Chen and I sat in the lamplight until dawn. Neither of us spoke. In the morning, I found frost damage on the inside of the windows. The glass was cracked in 3 places. thin lines spreading out from the center of each pane. The wood around the door frame showed stress fractures that hadn't been there before. I logged it all, precise descriptions, measurements, times. Chen logged her observations separately. When she finished, she came to me with the papers in her hand. "I want to stay," she said. I looked at her. "Most people wouldn't." "I know." "It's going to get worse. It always gets worse." "I know." "Then why?" She folded her papers and slid them into the filing cabinet. "Because the rules work," she said. "That's what you told me. The rules work, and compliance is survival. Last night proved it. We followed the rules, and we survived. We got lucky. Maybe, but we also followed the rules. Both things can be true." I nodded. "Welcome to Station 9, I said. Fall deepened into winter. The nights lengthened until darkness lasted 16 hours or more. The figure at the tree line became a constant presence, visible every clear night, standing just outside the salt perimeter, watching. Chen and I developed patterns, overlapping shifts, shared perimeter checks, double verification of every count, every measurement, every timestamp. We caught each other's near mistakes before they became mistakes. We held each other to the exact letter of every rule. The voice from the maintenance shed changed. It stopped pretending to be lost hikers. It stopped using human names. Instead, it spoke in fragments, disjointed phrases that almost made sense, but never quite did. The door remembers. The threshold waits. Count the steps. Count the beats. The boundary shifts, but the boundary holds. Hold the boundary. Count the steps. We ignored it. We ignored the thing circling the station. We ignored the lights above the tree line. We ignored my father's voice calling from the meadow, and Chen's mother's voice calling from the woods, and the 100 other voices that spoke our names in the dark. We followed the rules. The winter solstice brought the longest night of the year. 16 hours and 43 minutes from sunset to sunrise. Dispatch warned us in advance. Special protocols would be in effect. Solstice Protocol 1. All regular rules remain active. Extended hours require extended vigilance. Solstice Protocol 2. Between midnight and 3 a.m. On the solstice, movement outside the station is prohibited. No perimeter checks. No supply retrievals. No exceptions. Solstice Protocol 3. If any window or door is breached during the solstice night, abandon the station immediately via the emergency exit. Proceed to the safe cabin at elevation marker 1847. Do not return until dispatched personnel verify the station's integrity. We prepared for days. Extra salt, extra kerosene, sealed water bottles, full battery charges. We tested every lock, every seal, every barrier. At 4:43 p.m. on December 21st, the sun set. At 5 p.m., the footsteps began. Not the usual circuit, something different. Dozens of footsteps, maybe more, all circling the station at once. Different paces, different rhythms, overlapping and interweaving. It sounded like a crowd walking around us, each person following the same path, but at their own speed. We sat in the center of the room with a lamp between us. "Don't look at the windows," I said. "I know." "Don't listen for patterns." "I know." At 6:30, the first voice spoke. "Let us in." Not one voice, dozens, all speaking in unison. "Let us in. Let us in. Let us in." The words echoed off each other, creating harmonics, building into a sound that was almost music. Almost beautiful. Almost something you wanted to hear more of. We covered our ears. At 8:15, something tried the door. Not knocking, testing. I heard the handle jiggle, the wood flex against the frame, then silence, then the same thing at the back door, then at the window above the kitchen sink. Testing, probing, looking for weaknesses. "The seals are holding," Chen said. "I know." "Should we check them?" "No. Solstice Protocol 2. No movement until 3 a.m. "But what if no movement? The protocol is specific." At 10:42, the temperature dropped, not gradually. All at once, like someone had opened a door to the outside. Our breath fogged. Frost formed on the inside of the windows. The kerosene lamp's flame bent sideways, toward the front door, as if something were pulling at it. We moved closer to the lamp. We didn't speak. At 11 p.m., I saw the shadow under the door, just a sliver of darkness, thicker than the shadows around it, sliding through the gap between the door and the floor. It reached maybe 3 inches into the room before hitting the salt line I'd laid that afternoon. It stopped. I watched it probe the edge of the salt, testing, searching, looking for gaps. "Chen, I see it. Don't move." "I know." The shadow reached along the salt line, tracing its perimeter. It found the place where the line joined the threshold and pressed against it. The salt held. At midnight, the lights went out. Not a power failure. The lamp stayed lit. But something happened to the darkness outside the lamp's radius. It deepened, thickened, became something more than just absence of light. I could feel it watching us. 3 a.m., Chen whispered. "That's the end of the prohibition." "Yes, that's 3 hours." "Yes." The lamp flickered. The wick sputtered. I checked our kerosene reserves, half a jug, enough for maybe 2 more hours at this burn rate. I turned the wick down slightly. The light contracted. The darkness pressed closer. At 1:17, the voice came from inside the walls. "Let me tell you a story," it said. It wasn't speaking to us. It was speaking to itself, or to something else, or to nothing. Once there was a station in the woods. Rangers came and went. Some followed the rules, some didn't. The ones who didn't learned why the rules exist. The voice was calm, almost friendly. "The rules aren't protection. The rules are negotiation. We agreed not to cross certain lines. You agreed not to cross others. The salt holds because we allow it to hold. The doors lock because we allow them to lock. It's all negotiation, all agreement, all contract." I didn't respond, but contracts can be renegotiated. Boundaries can shift. Ask your fence posts, ask your tree line, ask the things that used to be 60 yards away and now stand at 10. The negotiation continues. The terms adjust. The lamp flickered again. Someday, the terms will adjust enough. Someday, the salt won't hold. Someday, the doors won't lock. And then the contract ends. Silence. At 2:43, the lamp went out. Complete darkness. Total. I couldn't see Chen 6 inches away. I couldn't see my own hands. "Don't move," I said. "I can't." "Don't move. Don't speak. Wait." I counted seconds. 60, 120, 180. At 3 a.m. exactly, the emergency lights kicked on. Dim red glow from the backup batteries. Enough to see shapes. Enough to see that the shadow under the door had retreated. Enough to see that the frost was melting from the windows. Enough to see that the night wasn't over. "Perimeter check," I said. "Both of us. Stay on the marked path." We geared up. Flashlights, salt, radios. We opened the door and stepped outside. The forest was silent. Not quiet, silent. No wind, no insects, no night birds. Complete, perfect, unnatural silence. We did the perimeter check, 412 feet along the eastern boundary. Exact. We checked the salt lines, intact. We checked the seals on the maintenance shed. Locked tight. At 4:56 a.m., the first hint of gray touched the eastern horizon. At 5:12, we heard the first bird call. At 5:31, the sun broke the ridgeline. We had survived the solstice. Chen and I stood on the porch, watching the light spread across the meadow. Neither of us had slept in nearly 24 hours. Neither of us cared. "One night," she said. "One night. And we follow the same rules tomorrow." "Yes." "And the night after that." "Yes." She looked at me. She was younger than I'd realized at first. 26, maybe 27. She looked older now. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For telling me the truth, about the rules, about not needing to understand." I nodded. "The rules work," I said. "That's all we need to know." Spring came slowly to Clearwater Basin. The days lengthened, the nights shortened. The figure at the tree line retreated to 30 yards, then 40, then 50. The fence posts stabilized at 24. The distance remained 412 feet. In April, Hendricks arrived with paperwork. "You've been here 11 months, he said. "That's a record for Station 9. The previous record was 14 months, and that ranger had a nervous breakdown at month 15. I'm not planning to have a nervous breakdown. Nobody plans for it, but it happens. That's why we rotate." He handed me an envelope. "Transfer offer, Station 3, day shift only. Regular hours. Less money, but more sanity. Chen's proven herself. She can take over here if you want to move on." I looked at the envelope for a long time. "I'll think about it. Take a week, let me know." He left before sunset. I found Chen on the porch, watching the meadow. "Hendricks offered me a transfer," I said. "I know," he told me. "Would you stay if I left?" She didn't answer immediately. "The rules work," she said finally. "I know them now. I could teach someone else, the way you taught me." "It's not just about knowing the rules. No, it's about following them, even when it doesn't make sense. Even when every instinct says to do something else. That's the real skill. That's what I learned from you." She turned to face me. "If you stay, I'll stay. If you go, I'll stay. Either way, this station needs someone who follows the rules." I looked out at the meadow, at the tree line, at the salt perimeter I'd maintained for almost a year, at all the boundaries I'd learned not to cross. "I'll stay," I said. "Good. For now." That's all any of us can promise. The seasons turned again. Summer came, with its long days and short nights. Fall followed, with its lengthening shadows. Another winter solstice passed, another spring. In my 18th month at Station 9, I began writing the new rules. Not new protocols. Those came from dispatch, from regional, from whoever monitored the things that happened in the dark. What I wrote was different. A guide for whoever came after. The things I'd learned that weren't in any official document. 18. If you survive long enough, you'll start to see patterns. The footsteps always circle clockwise. The voice from the shed always speaks at the same times. The figure at the tree line always retreats at the same rate in spring. Don't mistake patterns for understanding. Patterns are data. Understanding is dangerous. 19. The things outside the station can hear you. They know when you speak their names, even accidentally. They know when you speculate about them. They know when you try to understand them. Speak only about procedures. Think only about compliance. 20. Trust the rules more than you trust yourself. Your instincts evolved to handle natural threats. These are not natural threats. When your gut says run, the rules may say stay. When your gut says help, The rules may say ignore. The rules are older than your gut. Follow the rules. 21. If you find yourself wanting to know why, remember this. The rangers who came before you asked why. The ones who survived stopped asking. The ones who didn't stop asking are not here anymore. 22. The rules work. That's all you need to know. I showed the list to Chen on a clear night in early March. She read it twice, then handed it back. Add one more, she said. What? Something about the baton pass, about how every ranger leaves something for the next one. You did it for me. I'll do it for whoever comes next. That's how the station survives. That's how any of us survive. I added a final entry. 23. When you leave, and you will leave eventually, make sure the next person has everything they need. The rules, the amendments, the protocols, the unofficial advice. Leave it all. Hold nothing back. The station matters more than any one of us. The chain matters more than any one link. On my 24th month, I accepted the transfer to Station 3. Day shift, regular hours, less money, more sanity, they said. I wasn't sure I believed them about the sanity part anymore. Sanity meant something different after 2 years at Station 9. I packed my bags on a Thursday morning. Chen helped me carry them to the car. You have everything? I asked. Everything, she said. The rules, the amendments, the storm protocols, the solstice protocols, the measurement changes, the unofficial list. And you understand why. I don't need to understand. I need to follow them. That's what you taught me. I looked back at the station, the wooden walls weathered gray, the solar panels on the roof, the salt perimeter intact after 24 months of daily maintenance. It's a good station, I said. It is. Take care of it. I will. I drove down the service road, past the boundary markers, past the place where my phone signal returned, past the last of the green service signs. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. The rules didn't require it. But I thought of everything I was leaving behind. The procedures I'd memorized, the sounds I'd learned to ignore, the voices I'd never answered. The rules worked. That was all I knew. That was all anyone needed to know. Somewhere behind me, Chen would be preparing for sunset, checking the salt lines, verifying the locks, reviewing the fence measurement one more time, waiting for the darkness and everything it brought. And somewhere in a drawer at Station 9, a folder full of rules waited for the next person who needed them, the next link in the chain, the next ranger who would learn, as I had learned, that understanding was dangerous and compliance was survival. The rules work. Follow them. All of them. Every time. That's what I would tell the next person at my new station. That's what Chen would tell whoever replaced her. That's what generations of rangers had learned, written down, passed on. The rules work. Don't ask why. Just follow them.